Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to slow things down a bit. Take a deep breath because we are exploring something that we all experience but honestly rarely think about deeply, and that is how we rest. Specifically, we're unpacking a really fascinating 2026 study by Limbang, Tan, and Tan about the actual science behind the lunch break. Now, whether you're a middle school student trying to juggle a crazy class schedule or an adult working a full-time job, this research holds a pretty powerful secret about how your downtime directly affects your brain. So real quick, let's just go over our game plan for today so you know exactly where we're heading. We're going to start with the universal lunch break experience. Then we'll define a scientific concept called break autonomy. From there, we'll explore how it links to creativity and uncover the secret mechanism making it all happen, the power of good feelings. After that, we absolutely have to talk about the difference between correlation and causation. And finally, we'll wrap up with how you can take charge of your own rest. All right, Section 1, the lunch break experience. Who actually controls your downtime?
Think about your typical lunch break for a second. It's theoretically supposed to be your golden hour, right? That one oasis in the middle of a busy school day or a stressful shift at work. I want you to just pause and reflect on your own day. When that bell rings or when the clock strikes noon, who is actually deciding how you spend your break? Do you freely choose to go read a book, maybe take a quick walk, or just eat your sandwich in total silence? Or is your break totally dictated by a teacher, a boss, or even just the social pressure of sitting in a loud, crowded cafeteria? Maybe you're forced to hide out in the library just to get some peace and quiet. Well, the difference between those two very distinct experiences is exactly what scientists are trying to measure here.
Moving to Section 2. What is break autonomy? The science of choosing your rest. Let's dive right into the academic side of this. The researchers are focusing on something they call lunch break autonomy. Now, that sounds a little formal, but put simply, it's just the freedom and control to choose exactly how you spend your break time. It is not about having a super long break, it's about having a self-directed break. It means having the freedom to do what you want when you want to do it, even if that literally just means choosing to sit quietly and eat an apple without anyone bothering you. You are the boss of your own time. To figure out how this kind of freedom actually affects us, the researchers studied 191 workers in creative industries over in Malaysia. They asked these folks to look back over their past 2 weeks and really reflect on their daily lunch breaks. Did they feel in control, or did they feel restricted? By gathering this data, researchers got a real-world snapshot of how our everyday rest impacts our everyday performance. Which brings us to Section 3, the link to creativity. Freedom, and new ideas. So let's see how all this builds into the study's first major finding. And this is absolutely crucial. Workers who had the freedom to control their own breaks rated themselves as way more creative. When these individuals felt they got to decide for themselves what to do during their lunch hour, they actually reported being better at coming up with new, practical ideas when they went back to their desks. It's like their minds were just completely primed for innovation. The researchers explain this using something called self-determination theory. In plain English, this theory basically says that as humans, we have a built-in need for freedom. We just do. And when you satisfy that need by controlling your own break, you are effectively recharging your mental battery. You recover from stress. And because your brain isn't exhausting itself fighting against being controlled, you return to your math homework or your office project with a much more flexible and open mind. Let's look at Section 4, the power of good feelings, unlocking the mechanism. Okay, so how exactly does controlling a lunch break lead to all these great creative ideas? Well, the mediation model used by the researchers perfectly illustrates the flow here. It goes from lunch break autonomy directly to positive affect, and then to creativity at work. Now, positive affect is just the fancy scientific term for good feelings, happiness, enthusiasm, feeling energized. Choosing your break creates those good feelings, and it's actually those positive emotions that crack your mind wide open to creativity. And that brings us to another brilliant concept, the broaden and build theory. I want you to think of your brain kind of like a camera lens. When you're stressed out or you're forced to do things you really don't want to do, that lens narrows, right? You get tunnel vision. But when you feel happy because you actually got to control your break, positive emotions literally broaden your attention, your mental camera zooms out. And that allows you to see new connections, build new resources, and think highly creatively. Section 5. Correlation, not causation. Understanding the scientific limits. Now, we need to pause right here. We have to be very, very clear about how we read these scientific results. This is so important for anyone trying to understand research. There is a huge difference between cause and effect and correlation. Having break autonomy doesn't just magically push some button in your brain that instantly transforms you into a creative genius. Instead, the study shows correlation. That simply means that having freedom during your breaks and feeling creative are strongly connected. They tend to happen together.
See, because this was a cross-sectional study, meaning the researchers basically just took a single snapshot in time of these workers, we have to remember the limits of the data. It shows us a really powerful connection, for sure, but it does not prove a direct cause and effect relationship. Actually, there could be other factors at play here, like someone's individual personality or just the general vibe of their workplace. So, always keep in mind, this is a highly meaningful link we're talking about, not a magic wand.
Finally, Section 6, take charge of your rest. Why this matters for your day. So let's bring this all home and talk about the practical value of this research for you. Whether you're in middle school, high school, or working a super demanding career, this matters. The study points out a massive secondary benefit. Taking control of your rest doesn't just help you generate cool ideas. It is a vital everyday tool to fight off burnout and that awful end-of-the-day tiredness. The researchers found that having autonomy during your lunch break actually predicts decreased fatigue by the time you pack up to go home. So if you want to feel less exhausted at the end of the day, you have to find ways to take back control of your downtime, even if it's literally just for 15 minutes. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one empowering question to think about. What will you choose to do on your next break? Remember, advocating for yourself and intentionally choosing how you rest isn't just about being comfortable. It is science-backed maintenance for your brain. So protect your downtime. Thank you so much for joining me today and keep asking questions.